The story begins with Tsuyoshi Mukoda. He was just an ordinary office worker in Japan. One day, while he was at work, suddenly, a blinding light appeared out of nowhere. That light pulled him, along with 3 other high school students, into a strange new world. It turned out that all 4 of them had been summoned to the kingdom of Ryasager, and they were to become heroes who would save the nation from the threat of the Demon King. Right after everyone was summoned, they were tested for their special abilities. The 3 students each possessed powerful skills. One could wield the holy sword, another had holy-type magic, and the last one had exceptionally high combat stats. Meanwhile, Mukoda received a strange ability called Online Supermarket. Hearing that shocked everyone, because the skill seemed completely useless. Even Mukoda himself felt embarrassed, and he wanted to change his skill, but that was impossible. After the meeting, Mukoda quickly realized that something was off about this kingdom. The king appeared far too extravagant and cunning, so Mukoda decided he didn't want to get involved with this kingdom. He requested permission to leave the royal palace, since all he wanted was to live a normal life. Of course, the king agreed, because they believed keeping him around would be of no use anyway. So, the king gave him 20 gold coins as a form of support money. After leaving the palace, Mukoda changed into ordinary clothes, because he wanted to avoid drawing suspicion. First, he needed to rent a room to rest. While checking his status screen, Mukoda discovered that besides the online supermarket skill, he also possessed appraisal and item box, and those were both very rare abilities. So, he decided to open the online supermarket skill. Mukoda was utterly amazed, because its interface looked exactly like an online shopping website from his old world. He decided to try ordering some food. Mukoda placed a silver coin inside, and immediately, the goods appeared right before his eyes. Mukoda began to think, maybe this skill isn't as useless as I thought. It might actually help him make a living in this new world. Soon after, Mukoda decided to leave the kingdom of Ryasager as soon as possible. He asked the local children for directions, and managed to catch the last carriage heading toward a border town. On the way, he befriended a traveling merchant. The merchant specialized in trading luxury goods like linen and cotton threads. But when Mukoda asked about the item box and appraisal skills, the merchant was astonished. He explained that very few people possessed such skills, as they were usually granted only to summoned heroes. Only heroes possessed such extremely rare skills. Hearing that, Mukoda immediately realized he had to keep this secret hidden. When he arrived at the border, he discovered it was about to be sealed off, and all teleportation services had been suspended to prevent citizens from escaping the country. That made Mukoda even more certain that this kingdom is rotten. Wanting to cross into a neighboring nation, Mukoda went to the Adventurers Guild to hire an escort team. The initial cost was 8 gold coins. Although it was expensive, Mukoda still agreed to hire them. The escort team was led by a young man named Werner. He was a C-rank adventurer, leading 4 other teammates. The next morning, they set out on their journey. By noon, the group stopped to take a break, and Mukoda volunteered to cook. He pulled out a portable stove from his item box, which astonished everyone, because magical stoves here cost up to 50 gold coins. He began cooking miso soup and soft bread, all of which had been purchased through the online supermarket. Once he finished cooking, a rich and appetizing aroma spread through the air. The adventurers tried the food, and were completely amazed, because none of them had ever tasted anything so delicious. They even thought it was some kind of hometown specialty from Mukoda. After resting, the group continued their journey. Suddenly, Rita, the team's scout, heard a strange noise coming from the bushes ahead. Out of nowhere, a pack of monsters charged at them. Werner and Vincent, the team's swordsmen, quickly leapt into action to slay them. Thanks to Franca, the healing mage, the whole team remained safe. After the battle, Rita reported, "There's a very aggressive red boar up ahead." And sure enough, it appeared moments later. Werner and Vincent immediately launched their attack. After defeating the monster, they collected its hide and tusks to sell later. As for the meat, the others were planning to throw it away, but Mukoda thought it was a waste, so he asked for permission to store the meat in his item box. That night, he decided to cook the red boar meat for dinner. While everyone curiously gathered around to watch, Mukoda felt embarrassed and asked them to look away. He pan-fried the smoked meat, then stewed it together with vegetables and sausages. When the dish was finally done, a mouth-watering aroma filled the air. Everyone drooled just from the smell alone. After eating, the group couldn't stop praising him, because not only was the food delicious, it also made their bodies feel more energized than usual. Curious about this effect, Mukoda used his appraisal skill to check. When Mukoda saw their status screens, He was completely astonished. It turned out that the food from his old world had the ability to temporarily boost both physical and magical stats. A few days later, the group continued traveling through rough and dangerous roads. That night, they set up camp in the forest. Mukoda took out the remaining red boar meat. He sliced it thick and marinated it with ginger. Then grilled it using salad oil. The aroma that rose up made everyone's eyes sparkle. Because it was ginger grilled pork, tender, juicy, and full of flavor, the group ate heartily. But suddenly, all of their faces turned pale. Mukoda turned around and nearly fainted when he saw a giant Fenrir standing right behind him. However, it didn't seem to attack. The mighty creature demanded to eat the food he had just cooked. Trembling, Mukoda placed a plate of meat before it. The Fenrir devoured everything in an instant. Then it asked for more. So Mukoda had no choice but to cook 10 more servings, using up a ridiculous amount of sauce from the store. Finally, the Fenrir looked extremely satisfied. And then it said, "I want to form a contract with you." The adventurers were completely stunned, while Mukoda was utterly terrified. He intended to refuse, but when he looked around, he saw that everyone was nodding in agreement. So Mukoda reluctantly accepted. Fenrir gently touched its forehead to Mukoda's, and when the contract ritual was complete, from that moment on, Mukoda had to feed Fenrir 3 meals a day. And thus, his strange adventure officially began. Fenrir then demanded that Mukoda give it a name. However, every name Mukoda came up with sounded like a dog's name, which made Fenrir furious and growl, "Watch it, or I'll bite your head off." In the end, Mukoda settled on simply calling it Fen for convenience. From then on, Mukoda, along with Werner's 5-member party and Fen, continued their journey. Wherever they went, the townsfolk were filled with fear, because according to legend, the Fenrir species was said to have once destroyed an entire nation. Therefore, taking Fen across the border to another kingdom was extremely difficult. By lunchtime, Mukoda began to worry, because the red boar meat he had stocked up was almost gone. He scolded Fen, saying, "If you want to eat, then go hunt it yourself." Hearing that, Werner said they could use meat from his team's supplies, but whoever ate it would have to find their own. Before he could even finish his sentence, Fen dashed off, and just a minute later, it returned carrying a rock bird. That was a B-rank magical beast, one that even Werner's entire team together might not be able to defeat. So Mukoda got to work cooking. He grilled the meat on both sides until it was perfectly done. Then boiled the sauce and mixed it evenly. Before long, the roasted bird with onion soup was complete. He served portions to everyone first, and only afterward to Fen, since it ate an absurd amount. After the meal, the group continued their journey. When they reached the kingdom's border, a large number of soldiers had gathered at the gate due to Fen's presence. Captain Werner went ahead to negotiate, but the soldiers were terrified, fearing that the legendary beast might endanger the country. Mukoda calmly reassured them, saying, "Fen has no intention of harming anyone, unless someone deliberately causes trouble." After the captain confirmed that Fen was Mukoda's contracted familiar, they were granted permission to enter the kingdom. Upon entering the city, Mukoda was required to present his guild card. Otherwise, he would have to pay 5 gold coins, plus an additional 2 for his contracted familiar. However, Fen's appearance would surely reach the ears of the nobles, and perhaps even the king himself. Even so, Mukoda wasn't too worried, because he had planned to travel around the other world and make a living through his online supermarket skill. Werner advised Mukoda to register with either the Adventurers Guild or the Merchants Guild, if he wanted to be exempt from the entry tax. At that moment, Mukoda hesitated between 2 choices: joining the Merchants Guild to trade goods, or joining the Adventurers Guild to sell materials from the monsters Fen hunted. In the end, Franca suggested that he should join both. Upon entering the city, Mukoda had to pay additional taxes, which made him feel quite distressed. Suddenly, a noble's messenger appeared. The man said his master wished to invite Mukoda to the mansion. Mukoda politely declined, but the messenger kept insisting, which made Fen irritated. It let out a furious roar, sending the messenger fleeing in terror. Werner grew worried, since nobles valued their pride above all else. But Fen couldn't care less. It even boasted, 400 years ago, I fought evenly with an ancient dragon. After completing the escort mission, Mukoda said farewell to Werner's group. Then he and Fen continued their journey. They arrived at the Merchants Guild to register, where there were 5 ranking tiers. Mukoda started at the Iron rank, which was the lowest level. Since the inn didn't allow magical beasts inside, Fen had to stay in the stables. That evening, Mukoda prepared an early dinner. He experimented with different sauces, garlic, onion, and grated radish, while Fen devoured everything without a care. The next morning, Mukoda brought some salt and pepper to the Merchants Guild to sell. The guild master was astonished because of their exceptional quality. He even said they were first-class goods worthy of being offered to the king. Of course, Mukoda didn't reveal that they came from the online supermarket. The guild master offered a very high price, 4 gold coins for the salt and 10 for the pepper. When he saw Mukoda staying silent, he assumed Mukoda thought the price was too low, so he raised it to 17 gold coins. Mukoda immediately agreed, overjoyed that he wouldn't have to worry about money for a while. Finally, he went to register at the Adventurers Guild. The registration fee was 5 silver coins, and the lowest rank was G. After filling out the form, Mukoda received his first beginner's quest, collecting medicinal herbs. That night, he cooked Fen's favorite dish, garlic marinated meat. Suddenly, he realized that garlic wasn't actually good for dogs or cats. Mukoda hurriedly used appraisal. Then, he discovered that Fen's strength stat had already reached nearly the maximum limit. Mukoda could only sigh and mutter, "Well, that's it, you've gotten way too strong already." The next morning, since most of the cooking ingredients had run out, Mukoda decided to go outside to gather some herbs to store for upcoming meals. Meanwhile, Fen would go hunting for more ingredients. Fen noticed that there were many traces of monsters around the area. So before leaving, it created a sturdy barrier around where Mukoda was standing to protect him. Mukoda's job was fairly simple. He just needed to follow the list written on the request paper. And by using the appraisal skill, he could easily identify the herbs he needed. Thanks to that, he collected even more than the quest required. After finishing his task, Mukoda opened the Onlinea supermarket again to buy some ingredients for lunch. He chopped the onions finely, then sautéed them until fragrant and tender before adding minced meat and stirring well. When the meat was cooked, Mukoda poured in tomato sauce and broth, creating a thick and aromatic mixture. Just then, Fen returned, carrying a huge rock bird and several other prey. Seeing that overwhelming amount, Mukoda could only give an awkward smile. He went on to complete his dish, spaghetti with meat sauce and grilled meat. Fen looked at it curiously, since it had never seen such strange noodles before. But after Fen took a bite, it immediately liked it. At that moment, Mukoda sprinkled some grated cheese on top, making the dish richer and creamier in flavor. Fen devoured it so eagerly that the sauce splattered all over its body, causing Mukoda to burst out laughing. After the meal, Mukoda checked the ingredients Fen had hunted. Most of them were high-ranked and dangerous monsters. He carefully stored the bears and snakes inside the item box, leaving only the orc, which he hesitated about whether it was edible. Fen said that people in the city used to eat it all the time without any problem. By the afternoon, they returned to the town. Fen carried Mukoda on its back and ran so fast that he could only scream in fear. At the Adventurers Guild, Mukoda submitted the bundle of herbs he had gathered. The receptionist was surprised when she saw the amount far exceeded the request. So she chatted with Mukoda a little longer. As she glanced outside, she noticed Fen lying in the sunlight near the entrance. Her eyes unconsciously revealed a sense of fascination, but she quickly hid it. Mukoda wanted to hire someone to butcher the monsters Fen had hunted, which included 5 orcs and several dangerous B-rank monsters, and even one of A rank, and their meat was of the finest quality. The butcher promised to cut out a special portion just for Mukoda. The other materials could be sold separately. For now, the butcher sliced off a piece of orc meat for Mukoda to cook dinner with. Thanks to his item box that could preserve food indefinitely, he stored the rest without worry. That evening, Mukoda thinly sliced the orc meat, seasoned it with salt, pepper, and flour, then dipped it in egg. He fried it in a pan until golden and crispy. Mukoda made 2 types of special pork piccata with different flavors. The dish was light yet filling, the meat tender and rich in aroma. At first, Mukoda was a bit hesitant, but after taking a bite, he had to admit, orc meat is unbelievably good. The next morning, Mukoda returned to the guild to collect the butchered meat and the payment for the materials. When he heard the price, 202 gold coins, he almost fell over in shock. The butcher then explained, the orc's testicles are used as an ingredient for aphrodisiac medicine. The red boar's hide is used to make leather goods, and the fangs and magic stones of A-rank monsters are extremely valuable. During their conversation, the butcher mentioned, people in town are arguing whether Fen is actually a great wolf or not, since they believe that a true Fenrir would never agree to be a human's contracted beast. Hearing that, Mukoda thought to himself, they should just treat Fen as a great wolf and be done with it, less trouble that way. Now that Mukoda had a guild card, money, and enough experience, He decided to leave the border and continue his new journey. The two traveled a long distance before finding a place to rest. Mukoda opened his online supermarket, planning to treat Fen to a special earth dish. The moment Fen saw the hot meat and sausages, he immediately took a big bite, crispy and sweet. Meanwhile, Mukoda was cooking Japanese black beefsteak, a type of meat once famous in his homeland, and its flavor far surpassed any monster meat in this other world. Fen took a bite, his eyes lit up, and his entire body overflowed with energy. Mukoda used appraisal and was shocked to see Fen's strength stat had increased by more than 30%. Fen became so excited that he wanted to go hunting right away. He set up a barrier to protect Mukoda, then dashed straight toward the mountains. Fen struck down entire groups of monsters with lightning. Even an orc lord and a chimera couldn't withstand a single blow. The next morning, Mukoda woke up, and before him stood a mountain of high-ranked monster corpses that Fen had hunted during the night. He could only sit there in a daze and sigh. Next time, I'm never feeding him Japanese black beef again. In the following days, Mukoda had the chance to witness Fen hunting monsters. Fen used both his magic and his claws, among which he excelled most at wind magic. Thanks to being blessed by the wind goddess Ninra, Fen's power far surpassed that of any other wolf. It was Mukoda's first time seeing Fen cast magic, and he was completely mesmerized. Curious, he asked whether he could use magic too. Fen replied, "As long as you have mana, you can use magic." Mukoda immediately checked and was surprised to find that he did have mana. Fen continued, "If you want to use a certain spell, just focus your mind and imagine it clearly." However, Mukoda didn't really understand how it worked. He tried to imagine a fireball and held out his hand, but nothing happened, leaving him red-faced with embarrassment. Fen burst out laughing. He said, "You have to let your mana circulate through your body first." Then Fen told Mukoda to place his hand on him to feel it. At that moment, Mukoda felt a warm current flowing through his body, as if a stream of energy was awakening within him. Mukoda tried practicing again, and this time, he truly managed to summon a small fireball. Fen encouraged him, "You'll improve faster by practicing in real combat," but Mukoda immediately refused, because he was afraid of pain and of dying. So of course, Fen didn't bother asking again. He just grabbed Mukoda and carried him off. Mukoda's first opponents were a pack of goblins. Fen let out a loud howl that drew all of their attention to him, then calmly walked away, leaving Mukoda to handle things on his own. With no other choice, he trembled as he fired a few fireballs. Luckily, 2 of them hit their targets, but then he tripped on a rock and fell flat on the ground. Suddenly, a goblin with a sword charged straight at him. Mukoda thought he was done for, but the protective barrier was still active. He ran while desperately throwing more fireballs, and after managing to take down a few of them, Mukoda became exhausted and fainted. Fen returned afterward and cleaned up the rest with ease. Mukoda didn't wake up until evening. He was so tired that even in his dreams he saw the ugly faces of those goblins. But when he checked later, Mukoda realized he had leveled up, and his stats had slightly increased. Although goblins usually didn't have anything valuable, the Goblin King did possess a magic stone, which Fen brought back to exchange for money. Fen demanded a reward, Earth-style beef, but Mukoda sternly refused, since he still had leftover meat that hadn't been eaten yet. However, just as he was about to get up and cook, Mukoda suddenly felt dizzy. It turned out to be a symptom of mana exhaustion. He decided to rest and bought some sweets to recover his strength. After taking a bite, he immediately felt refreshed. Fen sniffed curiously and decided to try one too. Finding it delicious, he ended up eating them all. Mukoda quickly warned, "If you eat too many sweets, you'll get cavities and diabetes." Fen calmly replied, "I was blessed by the wind goddess Ninra, so I'm immune to all toxins and diseases. I can eat whatever I want without worry." Hearing that, Mukoda looked up at the sky, praying to the gods to grant him even a little bit of that kind of blessing. The next morning, they arrived at another town. When the townspeople saw Fen, they were terrified, mistaking him for a rampaging monster. Mukoda quickly explained, "This is my contracted familiar," and showed his guild card as proof. Trying to sound confident, Mukoda added, "He's a great wolf, an A- rank monster. I just happened to be lucky enough to form a contract with him." Right at that moment, Fen used telepathy to say to Mukoda, "I am not a great wolf." What? Mukoda panicked. He suddenly realized that thanks to their contract, they could communicate through thoughts. After being allowed into the city, Mukoda let Fen rest at the inn while he went out exploring on his own. He wanted to find a world map to make his travels easier, but none of the bookstores sold any. Instead, he only found an introductory book on magic. which cost a whopping 7 gold coins. Since paper here was considered extremely valuable, Mukoda then tried visiting the library, spending another 2 silver coins, but still couldn't find any useful information. By the time he returned to the inn, it was already late. Fen, starving, began throwing a little tantrum, so Mukoda had no choice but to buy some ready-made food, grilled chicken and skewered pork in Japanese-style sauces. One salty, one sweet. The crispy exterior and tender interior made Fen moan with delight as he ate. Meanwhile, Mukoda cooked himself some white rice. He poured the sauce and added slices of meat, but Fen insisted on sharing his portion too. The next day, Mukoda stopped by a tavern to befriend some experienced adventurers. His method of breaking the ice was simple. Mukoda just had to buy them drinks, and they instantly became friends. And when they heard that Mukoda came from the kingdom of Ryasugar, they said, ever since the current king ascended the throne, the country has fallen into chaos, and wars have been endless. They also told him about other lands, where many dungeons attract adventurers. But Mukoda wasn't very interested, because, to him, his life was still the most important thing. When Mukoda complained that he didn't have a map, one of the group whispered, "We have an old map. It was a gift from a senior adventurer. If you want it, you can have it for 1 gold coin." Mukoda thought for a moment, then agreed to buy it. However, after that group left, the others in the tavern suddenly burst out laughing. That map is sold all over the Adventurers Guild, and it only costs 1 silver coin. Mukoda froze, realizing he had been tricked badly. He felt both heartbroken and embarrassed. All he could do was sigh. Guess this counts as my tuition fee for surviving in another world. Meanwhile, in the heavens above, the wind goddess Ninrol was astonished to see Fenrir, her mighty divine beast, becoming friendly with a human. Down below, Mukoda had just gone through a real endurance test, when he had to sit on Fen's back as it dashed through the forest at a terrifying speed. Mukoda ended up covered in bruises. The two were on their way to the sea, but Fen suddenly stopped by a lake because it was craving fish. It released a powerful bolt of lightning and let out a loud howl, causing all the fish in the lake to float to the surface. Electrocuted, Mukoda scooped up a few and discovered that some of them were poisonous. He complained that even with divine protection, if he were really poisoned, he would still die. Fen only laughed, saying it enjoyed the tingling sensation on its tongue when eating poisonous fish. After that, Mukoda started a fire to grill the fish. He cleaned out the guts, washed them thoroughly, and skewered them, sprinkled some salt, and grilled them slowly. For the bigger ones, he removed the heads, split the bodies open, added onions, mushrooms, salt, pepper, and butter, then wrapped them in foil and placed them on the fire. He also fried a few battered pieces of fish. The delicious aroma spread everywhere. Fen and Mukoda tasted each dish one by one. Both of them couldn't help but exclaim, "This is absolutely delicious." Mukoda opened a beer to enjoy with the food, feeling as if he were really on a camping trip. Suddenly, he noticed a small slime crawling toward him. When he touched it, he found it soft like jelly. Fen said that slimes could eat anything, even trash and pebbles, so Mukoda decided to feed it a few things. The slime cleaned up all the trash around the camp, making Mukoda laugh and praise it for being a good slime. Overjoyed, the slime jumped up, crawled into his hand, as if wanting to become his familiar. Mukoda agreed and named it Sway. The next day, Mukoda practiced his stone shooting skill, but his power was still weak. During a break, Sway asked for food again. Mukoda realized that in just a few days, Sway had grown rapidly and leveled up noticeably. He cooked some pork with miso sauce, and as soon as it was ready, Fen devoured it eagerly. Sway wanted to try it too. After tasting it, both of them held up their bowls, asking for more. Mukoda burst out laughing, finding the scene just like taking care of real pets. Sway even helped him wash the dishes by eating them clean, which delighted him immensely. That night, Mukoda prepared dorayaki and green tea for Sway to enjoy. Every time Sway liked something, it would form a heart shape, making Mukoda laugh at its cuteness. The next morning, Fen announced that there was a message from the wind goddess Ninrol. She had heard Mukoda's wish for divine protection and decided to grant him her blessing. In return, Mukoda had to offer her sweets from Earth every week as an offering. Although this blessing couldn't save him from death, it could protect him from all abnormal status effects. Mukoda took it seriously. He built a small stone altar, pressed his hands together in prayer, and offered red bean cakes. Immediately, the goddess's voice echoed joyfully, delighted to taste the sweets she had longed for. She praised them so much that she couldn't stop eating like a child. Mukoda could only sigh helplessly. He told himself he needed to save sweets more carefully, since this goddess was just as gluttonous as Fen. After receiving the blessing, Mukoda continued his training. This time, the stones he shot flew much faster and stronger than before. Meanwhile, Sui had reached level 13, but every time it used too much magic power, it would become exhausted. Mukoda had to feed it chocolate to restore its energy. However, Fen caught the scent of chocolate and immediately threw a tantrum, demanding a share. Feeling helpless, Mukoda bought more sweets and split them between the two. Just then, the voice of goddess Ninral echoed again, asking him to offer chocolate and dorayaki once more, even though she had just eaten them the day before. Mukoda could only cry out, "Oh, come on, lady, it hasn't even been a week yet. And you're hungry again?" Fen laughed gleefully at the scene. After finishing the offering, Mukoda climbed onto Fen's back, and together with Sui, continued their journey full of surprises ahead. It turned out the place Fen was leading him to wasn't an ordinary hunting ground, but a real combat dungeon. Fen explained that it was time for Mukoda to train his holy earth magic. Mukoda panicked and tried to run away, but Fen grabbed him by the collar and threw him inside. Right after that, a deep rumbling echoed throughout the cave, making Mukoda's hair stand on end. He wanted to flee, but Fen said coldly, "Sometimes, you must learn to protect yourself." Before the battle, Mukoda decided to have a big meal. He knew that dishes from Earth could strengthen people in this world. While Mukoda was eating ravenously, Sui, the little slime, was absorbing non-food items instead. Thanks to that, its level rose quickly and its body visibly swelled in size. After feeling ready, Mukoda drew his sword and stepped into the dungeon. Still trembling with fear, he only moved when Fen pushed him forward. Before long, they encountered their first slime. Sui swiftly spat out a stream of thick acid, defeating the enemy in a single strike. Then two more appeared, and this time, Mukoda fought alongside Sui. He used the rock bullet spell to attack. This dungeon seemed to be a living creature. It absorbed the corpses of monsters to grow stronger. The group continued to move deeper inside, when they encountered a herd of horned rabbits. Mukoda was so terrified that he forgot to use his magic. Then, when facing goblins, he accidentally cast Fireball instead of the rock bullet he was supposed to practice. Going even deeper, they ran into bipedal wolves. Mukoda panicked and ran away, but eventually calmed himself down, and managed to knock one down using rock bullet. Finally, they reached the deepest floor. In front of Mukoda was a vast open area, and Fen warned that there were over 100 wolves there. Just as Mukoda was about to retreat, Fen threw him straight into the battlefield. Sui was full of enthusiasm, while Mukoda trembled with fear. The entire pack of wolves charged at them, but Mukoda's barrier blocked most of the attacks. He fired rock bullets while screaming in terror. Sui wasn't any less fierce. It kept spewing acid, attacking waves of wolves one after another. After taking down the wolf pack, the boss appeared. The giant monster swung its axe down, tearing the ground apart. Mukoda ran while counter-attacking, but his stone bullet barely scratched it. Fen warned that if he got hit, his barrier could shatter, putting all his strength into it. Mukoda launched an enormous stone bullet at the monster's head, dealing a heavy blow, but he was exhausted and collapsed to the ground. At that moment, Sui fired a stream of concentrated acid, completely annihilating the boss. Moments later, it hopped over and gently patted Mukoda's cheek, saying sweetly, "Master, please wake up." Mukoda was stunned. It was the first time he had ever heard Sui speak. It turned out that after defeating the boss, Sui had evolved and reached rank B, gaining the ability to talk. Mukoda also leveled up to 4 and learned earth magic. However, he was still weaker than Sui, which made the innocent little slime ask, "Master, aren't you happy that Sui got stronger?" Hearing that cute voice, Mukoda could only smile helplessly. A while later, Fen returned, his mouth covered in red blood. He said that since Mukoda had been unconscious for too long, he went hunting for something to eat. It turned out Fen's warning, "Your barrier might break," was just a lie to force Mukoda to unleash his full power. Mukoda felt both annoyed and grateful, and decided to start cooking. He chopped onions, sliced the rock bird meat into bite-sized pieces, stir-fried them with seasonings, then poured eggs over the pan. When the eggs were half-cooked, he added the remaining ingredients and poured everything over a bowl of rice, finishing the dish, oyakodon. Before he could even offer it, Fen and Sui were already waiting eagerly behind him. Both devoured the food, then even asked for another bowl. After the meal, Sui told him that while Mukoda was unconscious, it told him that it had chatted a lot with Uncle Fen. Hearing Sui call him that, Mukoda burst out laughing, while Fen's face turned bright red. When Sui called Mukoda, "Master," Fen snapped at it, making Sui shrink back. Seeing that, Mukoda picked Sui Yu Pan and gently patted its head to comfort it. In the end, Fen finally gave in and said, "Fine, if you want to call me uncle. Then do as you wish." All three burst into laughter, and the once terrifying dungeon now felt warm and full of joy. Upon hearing that the forest ahead was home to boss-level monsters, Mukoda nearly fainted from fear. And sure enough, moments later, a whole horde of orc lords appeared, surrounding them and baring their fangs menacingly. Fen told Mukoda to step back. Then with just a single swipe of his claw, the leader was instantly obliterated, sending the rest fleeing in panic. Seeing how cool that move was, Sui also wanted to imitate that move, but unfortunately, it didn't have claws. Mukoda laughed and patted its head, encouraging, "Sui's acid spray is already amazing enough." Hearing that, Sui trembled with joy, its body glowing softly. That night, Mukoda worked nervously, shivering at the rustling sounds of monsters lurking in the darkness. When Sui said it was hungry, he came closer, petted it, and prepared dinner for everyone. Compared to Fen, Mukoda treated Sui much more gently, as if he were caring for a small child. By now, the three of them had been traveling for 3 weeks, yet they had only made it halfway through the forest. Thinking that it would take another 3 weeks to get out, Mukoda could only sigh helplessly. Today, he decided to try cooking spicy black snake. He filleted the meat from the bones, cut it into bite-sized pieces, sprinkled sugar, sake, and salt, then added ginger, garlic, and various spices. After that, he poured in a sauce made from green onions, white onions, and potato starch. The aroma spread everywhere, though he was scared at first. Mukoda told himself, "It's just chicken," and took a bite. To his surprise, the dish was incredibly delicious. Seeing Mukoda and Fen enjoying it so much, Sui jumped over, asking for its share. While eating, it even shaped a little heart, making Mukoda burst out laughing. But in the end, Fen ended up eating his master's portion too, leaving Mukoda with only a tiny bit to sandwich and bread. The next day, while gathering herbs, Mukoda accidentally discovered a type of mushroom that could quickly heal wounds and fractures. He picked a few and brought them back. Sui smelled the pleasant scent, asked to eat some, and moments later, its whole body began to glow. Using his appraisal skill, Mukoda found out that Sui had learned the skill potion making. Even Fen was astonished, as he had never seen a slime with such an ability before. Overwhelmed with emotion, Mukoda hugged Sui tightly, showering it with praise. Right after that, Sui even created a high-grade healing potion capable of saving someone on the brink of death, leaving Mukoda deeply impressed. That afternoon, the group encountered a gigantic griffin-like monster. At first, they thought it was going to attack, but to their surprise, the bird could speak. It bowed its head, asking to duel Fen to prove itself worthy of becoming the leader of its flock. Fen nodded in agreement and instantly charged forward. The bird slashed fiercely with its claws, but Fen dodged skillfully, then countered with a powerful kick that sent it soaring into the sky. The griffin spread its wings, creating a fierce whirlwind to launch a surprise attack. Yet Fen easily avoided it and retaliated with an even stronger gust of wind, blasting the creature away. Seeing the bird severely injured, Mukoda hurriedly shouted for Fen to stop. He poured the entire bottle of healing potion over the creature and asked Sui to assist. Moments later, the wounds began to close. Though defeated, the bird thanked Fen for accepting the duel. Mukoda then comforted it, saying, "You even managed to wound Fen a little. That's an achievement to be proud of," Mukoda said. Hearing that, the bird cried out joyfully, summoning its entire flock to witness the moment. It was officially recognized as the leader and gifted Mukoda a precious feather, promising that if he ever passed through their territory, he would never be attacked. That evening, Mukoda cooked deep-fried brain meat, coating it in flour, egg, and breadcrumbs before frying it until crispy. He served it with cabbage and a tangy sweet sauce. The fragrant dish made Fen and Sui fight over the food, eating multiple rounds. Just then, Fen reminded Mukoda that it was time to offer tribute to goddess Ninril. Shocked, Mukoda realized he had forgotten and hurriedly prepared some sweets to present at the makeshift altar. The next morning, the three finally emerged from the dense forest. Before them stretched a vast plain under a clear blue sky. However, before they could rest, they saw a carriage being attacked by bandits. Fen and Mukoda immediately rushed forward. With just a single roar from Fen, the entire group of thieves trembled, dropped their weapons, and surrendered. The man leading the caravan introduced himself as Lam, the owner of a traveling merchant group. The remaining 5 people were adventurers hired as escorts. Both parties shared the same destination, the neighboring kingdom, so they invited Mukoda to travel together. In return for saving their lives, the merchant group promised to guide him and ensure a safe passage through their territory. No one could believe how quickly the rumor had spread that Fen, a legendary monster, was serving a human. Even the members of the Adventurers Guild had already heard about it. Apparently, news in this world could be transmitted through magical message transfer spells, allowing such stories to spread almost instantly. That evening, Mukoda chose a secluded spot to cook freely without being watched. When Fen said it wanted meat, Mukoda groaned. Meat again? It's meat every single day. But when little Sway, the slime, chimed in, I want meat too, he immediately changed his tone, smiling as he took out the last bits of meat left to prepare 2 new dishes, deep-fried meat, with one version marinated in a special soy sauce. The merchants and adventurers nearby caught the delicious aroma, their stomachs growling loudly. Mukoda smiled and invited everyone to join. Within moments, they were devouring the food eagerly, unable to stop even though it was still piping hot. In the end, all the meat was completely gone, and Mukoda was the only one who hadn't even had a bite. That night, the adventurer group took over the night watch, as a way of repaying him for the meal. The next morning, the entire caravan arrived at Carolina City, a region belonging to the neighboring kingdom. The captured bandits had already been handed over to the knights. When they reached the Adventurers Guild, Mukoda presented his guild card, but unfortunately, it had been revoked. The reason was that he had stayed in the forest for too long without accepting any quests, thus losing his qualification as an adventurer. The receptionist explained, for new adventurers, if you quickly accept and complete a quest, you'll be promoted from rank G to rank F and your card will be revalidated for another 3 months. So Mukoda had no choice but to register again from the beginning. This time, he even added Sway, the little slime, as his familiar. Everyone in the guild burst out laughing, thinking he was joking. No one could have imagined just how powerful and adorable that little slime really was. Afterwards, Mukoda hired the guild to process the meat and sell the monster parts that Fen had hunted. As for the chimera, he hid it, not bringing it out because it was too dangerous. The monster butchers were extremely excited to touch such top-quality goods. They said, even if other places accept to butcher, only the Adventurers Guild works properly and charges fairly. The group of 5 adventurers who had been there before curiously asked, what kind of meat did we eat yesterday? When they heard Mukoda say it was all top-quality meat, they could only bow their heads and apologize profusely. But Mukoda just laughed, it's okay. I still have plenty of meat. The adventurers were grateful and promised that if anything happened, they would come to help. In the evening, when Mukoda was preparing to go to sleep, the wind goddess Ninril suddenly called him awake, reminding him, you must not forget your duty to offer your tribute. At that moment, there happened to be a pudding and jelly sale, so he hurriedly bought a few boxes to offer to the goddess. The next morning, Mukoda went to the guild to select a commissioned task. He planned to choose collecting herbs for safety, but Fen insisted, pick the goblin hunt. It levels up much faster. Mukoda pretended not to hear, trying to avoid the dangerous task. But then Fen turned to little Sway and asked, do you want to go shoot some pop acid? So Mukoda had no choice but to give in. Indulging both of them, he led them to the eastern forest where goblins appeared frequently. According to the rules, hunting 5 goblins would earn 3 silver coins and 3 points. Accumulate 100 points to reach rank F as soon as they encountered the first few goblins. Sway fired 3 acid shots in a row, wiping them out in an instant. To prove their accomplishment, they had to cut off the goblins' ears, something Mukoda was extremely afraid of. He trembled, cried out to the heavens, but in the end, he still had to do it, because he yelled too loudly. Another entire group of goblins arrived, prompting Sway to sweep them all away again. Fen reminded, there's an entire goblin village ahead. Mukoda wanted to go back immediately, but Sway's wide, excited eyes made it impossible for him to refuse. He reluctantly nodded in agreement. The result was a pile of goblin corpses, making Mukoda feel like vomiting. Sway then split into dozens of smaller versions, cleaning up everything by melting them all, looking both terrifying and oddly cute at the same time. From that point on, Sway evolved one more level, gaining the ability to grow or shrink at will. That noon, Mukoda was exhausted, so he stopped by a shop to buy a savory meat-filled bun. Sway happily ate with him, glowing as it ate, and kept praising continuously. Fen was also surprised and praised the bun for the first time. This is really delicious. After saying that, its face turned red again, At first, Mukoda thought it would take 2 to 3 months to rank up. But the result, after just one day, he had enough points to advance to rank F. Mukoda bringing back an entire large bag containing goblin hands caused the Adventurers Guild to go into chaos. Everyone was shocked by the enormous quantity. Shortly after, the guild master invited Mukoda and Fen into a private room to talk. Mukoda thought he was about to get into trouble, but it turned out the guild master only wanted to properly reward him for clearing the entire goblin nest. During that meeting, Fen accidentally revealed its true identity as a mythical creature from the Fenrir clan. The entire guild was stunned. For a long time, people believed that just a single Fenrir was enough to destroy an entire nation. At the same time, an urgent letter from the royal palace was sent, announcing that Mukoda was allowed to move freely throughout the kingdom, and that the nobles were not permitted to interfere with or harm him. Thus, Mukoda was officially recognized as a free person. Seeing that Mukoda's abilities far exceeded rank G, the guild master suggested promoting him directly to rank C. However, in return, he hoped that Fen could help the guild complete some rank A and S commissions, since high-level tasks were often overdue because no one was strong enough to accept them. He greatly hoped for their assistance. On that occasion, Mukoda brought along some high-grade magical beast materials to sell, such as Orc Lord, Chimera, and Black Serpent. However, the guild could not purchase them because their value was too great. In fact, even the Chimera and Orc Lord could not be properly priced. Among those rare items, there was also the Blue Ogre, an S-rank magical beast, which made the guild master break into a sweat. Meanwhile, Sway, Mukoda's small slime, jumped out of the bag, looking eager to become as strong as Uncle Fen. Fen only gave a slight glance but secretly felt a bit proud to be admired by Sway. In the evening, Mukoda decided to cook a light meal, without any oil or grease. He took the stone bird breast meat, boiled it with wine and salt, then added tomatoes and sesame sauce, creating Bang Bang Stone Bird. After that, he stir-fried the stone bird meat with bell peppers and soy sauce, resulting in a flavorful and appetizing dish. While eating, Sway happily praised the sweet brown-colored dish, and Fen ate most of the meat, leaving only a few pieces behind. After the meal, Mukoda realized Fen's sleeping space was a bit cramped, so he added a thick mat for it to rest on. Sway curled up to sleep beside its master, looking extremely cute. The next morning, Mukoda received a rank C adventurer card, along with a huge reward from the sale of the magical beast materials. In total, he received 1946 gold coins. This included the reward for clearing the Goblin Cave and the money from selling magical beasts. The guild master also presented 2 commissions he wanted Fen to carry out. The first was to eliminate the metal lizards living at the foot of the mountain, a species with iron-like skin, making them almost immune to physical attacks. The second was to slay the bloodhorn cattle, aggressive creatures living in herds on the western plains, whose meat was considered a top-grade delicacy. After that, Mukoda went to Mr. Lambert's shop to buy a new bag for Sway. The shop owner enthusiastically introduced various bags made from magical beast hides. When Sway was released, it jumped around everywhere and immediately chose a soft bag it liked. Mukoda also bought a leather belt, a small wallet, and a new pair of leather shoes, costing a total of 11 gold coins. However, Mr. Lambert adamantly refused to take the money, treating it as a repayment of gratitude because Mukoda had previously saved his life, and had also given him top-quality magical beast meat. That evening, Mukoda tried making crispy fried red snake. He fried the snake twice in hot oil so that the outside became crunchy while the inside remained tender and sweet. The dish smelled fragrant, and paired perfectly with beer, because there was too much meat. Fen, Sway and Mukoda ate their fill together, ending a day full of joy and peace. After receiving the commissions, Mukoda and Fen set off for the mountain where the metal lizards lived. Upon arrival, Fen stood still, listening to the sounds carried by the wind, then immediately charged straight into the cave. However, the creature inside was no longer an ordinary metal lizard, but had evolved into a mithril lizard, a creature with skin made of extremely magic-resistant metal. Because the mithril scales could disperse magical energy, all magic attacks were nullified. But for Fen, this was not a problem. It merely cast an extremely powerful lightning spell, causing the mountain to tremble and the giant monster to be destroyed in a single blow. Mukoda ran over to inspect the beast's corpse, and discovered that the cave also contained natural mithril ore, an extremely precious material. He carefully collected some for research, planning to make armor for himself, but Fen immediately brushed it off, saying that nothing could compare to its protective barrier, so it was unnecessary. Even before resting, Fen dragged Mukoda to complete the second mission, eliminating the herd of bloodhorn cattle on the western plains. Mukoda intended to sit and rest with Sway, but the little slime refused. It struggled, jumped onto Fen's shoulder, and disappeared along with it. Just a few minutes later, both of them returned, reporting that the herd of cattle had been completely eliminated. When they brought the mithril lizard's corpse back to the guild, everyone was stunned. According to records, this species had only appeared once in over 400 years. Not only was the beast rare, but the mithril ore Mukoda found was also considered a national treasure. The guild master immediately reported the news to the royal palace, and Mukoda was asked to sell all the ore and the creature's corpse to them. In return, he received a reward of 5,000 gold coins, an amount enough to live comfortably for life. That evening, Mukoda grilled a bloodhorn cattle steak. He cut the meat into thick slices, sprinkled salt and pepper, then grilled it over the fire until it gave off a fragrant aroma. When bitten into, the juices poured out, and the rich flavor seemed to melt on the tongue. Fen praised the meat, saying it was better than any other meat it had ever eaten, while Sway shaped its body into a heart to thank its master. After dinner, it was time to offer tributes to the wind goddess Ninra. The goddess Mukoda was serving. She demanded one dish after another, all sweets. Unexpectedly, 3 other goddesses also appeared. Meanwhile, the Adventurer Guild announced urgent news. The Lord had gifted Mukoda 5,800 gold coins for discovering the mithril mine. At the same time, a herd of Wen appeared on the western plains and attacked the people. Rumors that Wen had appeared multiple times recently were true. Those attacked were poisoned. The guild had not yet prepared the antidote. Mukoda brought along several high-grade potions and treated many people in time, neutralizing the toxins and saving their lives. The guild immediately assigned an urgent mission to adventurers of rank C and above: exterminate the Wen herd to protect the city. Mukoda, Fen, and Sway could not stand by and watch. Fen bowed to the guild master, then rushed toward the battlefield. Wen are herd-dwelling creatures, aggressive and venomous in the tail, so everyone had to stay alert. Fen carried Sway on its back and charged straight into the herd, dodging attacks, while Sway unleashed a series of destructive techniques. Mukoda instructed Sway, when the prey is flying, aim for the head or the wings. The head is easy to kill but small. The wings are bigger and easier to hit. Sway tried aiming for the head but missed, then hit the wings. Fen only needed a slight swipe to decapitate one. They tried to keep the corpses as intact as possible so the meat would remain delicious. Fen skillfully executed precise slashes. During the battle, a Wen spotted Mukoda and rushed at him, startling him. Luckily, Fen's protective barrier shielded Mukoda in time. In the end, Sway risked itself to protect him, and Fen finished off the Wen herd with a powerful decapitating strike. The Adventurers Guild members waited nervously all the time, and when they heard that the entire wyvern herd had been exterminated, they screamed in delight. Fen and Sway even bragged, saying it was only because they were busy eating, and that those monsters could have been taken down in a single moment. Mukoda could only groan and hold his head, trying to hide the incident, while the 2 mouths blurted everything out. After finishing the task, Mukoda returned home, preparing to offer tributes to the goddesses. The next morning, on the way, Mukoda was respected by the surrounding people. Everyone called him the hero who had defeated the wyvern pack. He arrived at a bathhouse store. His face lit up with delight. The shop owner saw this and enthusiastically introduced each type. All of them were luxurious, beautiful, but Mukoda quickly chose a green bathtub. When it was mealtime, Mukoda scooped rice into a bowl, poured wyvern meat on top. Fen ate rice for the first time, immediately praising the meat for being tender, rich in flavor, both salty and sweet. The red ginger made the dish even more flavorful. Upon hearing that from now on Mukoda would bathe him twice a month, Fen seemed reluctant, while Sway was delighted, sending hearts non-stop. The next day, Mukoda brought the earth dragon corpse to the guild. However, they did not dare to accept it, because no part of a dragon is ever worthless, from scales, claws to internal organs. Everything is a treasure. But the guild master had a suggestion. In a distant city, there was a guild leader very knowledgeable about dragons, who could help dissect this species. Thus, it pleased Fen, and provided a valid reason to set off. Moreover, Fen had long wanted to go to the sea, to hunt seafood to satisfy his craving. The next morning, Mukoda went to bid farewell to Mr. and Mrs. Lamb along with acquaintances in this city. The guild master handed him a letter of introduction along with a map to the destination. So the 3, Mukoda, Fen, and Sway, continued their new journey, heading toward the distant city ahead. And so part 1 ends here. See you all in the next part. Today's video ends here. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to support Oni-chan in making more interesting videos. Thank you everyone for watching until the very end. Love always.